How to sell a rental property in PA. What to expect from offer to closing. If you own a 2 to 4 unit rental in York County and you're weighing a sale, here's what to expect. We'll walk through 7 parts, start to finish, so you know what's coming before you're in it. What a serious buyer's first call should sound like. For a 2 to 4 unit owner, the first phone call from a buyer is the moment to read whether the conversation is worth continuing. What a credible buyer's questions sound like. The pattern: specific, operational, focused on understanding the actual asset and the actual situation. The buyer is doing real underwriting work as they ask. What a wholesaler's pitch sounds like. The pattern: scripted, generic, focused on getting to a price quickly without understanding the asset. The caller is qualifying you, not the property. Red flags that say wholesaler or marketing funnel. 5 things in a first call that signal you're talking to someone who isn't a real buyer. They don't know the address or basic property details. They ask price first, and they use heavy urgency language. What a real buyer says about price in the first call. The price band reflects what the buyer can support given the property profile they've heard described. Specific number requires verification. This is the right pace. What a serious seller does in the first call. For a seller fielding the call, answer specific questions about the property honestly. Don't volunteer your bottom line price first, and ask about the buyer's process. Red flags in a rental purchase offer. When a buyer presents an offer, letter of intent, or agreement of sale on a 2 to 4 unit rental, the dollar amount is the first number a seller looks at. Red flag 1. Low or no earnest money deposit, EMD. What you'll see: earnest money deposit of $500, $100, or in some cases $0, or EMD of $1,000 on a $300,000 property, 0.3% of price. Red flag 2. Open-ended financing contingency. What you'll see: this offer is contingent on buyer obtaining financing satisfactory to buyer. No specified loan type, no specified terms, no time limit. Red flag 3. Inspection contingency without limit. What you'll see: buyer may terminate at buyer's sole discretion based on results of inspection. Red flag 4. Buyer's due diligence period that's effectively a free option. What you'll see: buyer shall have 30 days for due diligence, during which buyer may terminate for any reason and receive return of EMD. Red flag 5. Assignment language that allows transfer to another buyer. What you'll see: buyer or buyer's assignee, or buyer may assign this contract to any party. Red flag 6. Seller paid concessions or atypical credits. What you'll see: seller to credit $X at closing for repairs/closing costs/prepaids, or seller to pay buyer's closing costs up to $X. What a clean offer looks like. When all of these are present and reasonable, the offer is workable. Negotiating from there is normal. Navigating around aggressive boilerplate is harder. Why some offers fall through after AOS and PA. A seller signs the agreement of sale, the buyer signs the agreement of sale, the deposit goes into escrow, and the deal feels done. But it isn't. Failure mode 1. Financing falls through. What happens? Buyer signs agreement of sale contingent on getting a specific loan approved. The loan doesn't materialize. Either the lender's underwriting comes back with conditions the buyer can't meet, the appraisal comes in low and the lender won't loan the full amount, or the buyer's qualifications change between AOS and lender commitment. Failure mode 2. Inspection findings cause renegotiation that fails. What happens? Inspector finds issues. Buyer requests repairs or price reduction. Seller and buyer can't agree. Buyer terminates per the inspection contingency. Failure mode 3. Title issues surface and can't be resolved cleanly. What happens? Title search reveals a lien, a clouded chain of title, an unresolved easement, a missing release on an old mortgage, or a similar encumbrance. Failure mode 4. Buyer cold feet or buyer side life event. What happens? Buyer changes their mind or has a life event, job change, divorce, family emergency that disrupts their plans. They terminate or simply stop responding. What the right buyer profile looks like. Sellers who pre-qualify their buyer along these dimensions usually close. Sellers who take the highest paper offer without vetting the buyer often don't. What this means at the offer comparison stage. When comparing two offers, one for $260,000 from an out-of-area cash buyer with no track record, another for $245,000 from a local debt service coverage ratio buyer with 5 prior closings. The local buyer is often the better economic outcome. The earnest money question. What's normal in York County? Earnest money, the deposit a buyer puts down at AOS to demonstrate good faith, is one of the most under-discussed items on a rental property sale. What earnest money is for. It does not fully compensate the seller for a failed deal. Relisting costs, carrying costs, and price pressure from this property has been on the market and fell through usually exceed even a 1 to 2% EMD. What's customary in York County small multifamily? For a typical York County direct sale 2 to 4 unit, $1,000 to $5,000 covers most situations. Anything below $1,000 is light enough to be worth asking about. Where the EMD sits. The escrow holder is bound by the AOS terms. They release the deposit only as the contract directs. They can't unilaterally give it to either party. When the EMD becomes hard. In standard contracts, EMD is refundable to the buyer if they terminate during the contingency periods, inspection, financing, title. What forfeits the EMD? The clean read. If the buyer walks for a contractually allowed reason, they get EMD back. If they walk for any other reason, they forfeit the EMD. How EMD affects deal close probability. Sellers who track this across many deals see a clear pattern. EMD amount correlates with deal close probability. Negotiating EMD as a seller. When all three are in normal ranges, the EMD is doing its job. The deal has the right level of commitment to give it a high closing probability. What due diligence a buyer actually does between AOS and close. Once an agreement of sale is signed on a 2 to 4 unit rental, both sides enter the diligence period, typically 4 to 6 weeks for a financed York County deal. Workstream 1. Inspection, days 1 to 14 from AOS. The buyer hires a licensed home inspector, sometimes accompanied by specialty inspectors for HVAC, electrical, plumbing, or environmental items. Workstream 2. Lender underwriting, days 1 to 21 from AOS. The lender may also ask for an estoppel certificate from each tenant, a one-page document the tenant signs confirming the lease terms, rent amount, and security deposit. Workstream 3. Title work, days 7 to 28 from AOS. The settlement company orders a title search to verify the seller's ownership and identify any liens, encumbrances, or other title issues that need to be resolved before closing. Workstream 4. Appraisal, days 14 to 28 from AOS. If the buyer is financing, the lender orders an appraisal to verify the property's value supports the loan amount. Workstream 5. Rent roll verification plus tenant transition, ongoing. For a seller with engaged, communicative tenants, this workstream is straightforward. For a seller with hostile or non-responsive tenants, it can extend the timeline or surface issues that affect the deal. How the workstreams interact. When all 5 workstreams clear cleanly, the deal closes around day 42 to 45, about 6 weeks. When one workstream surfaces issues, that workstream's timeline extends and may delay closing, but the others typically continue in parallel. What the seller should have ready up front. A seller with this packet ready on day 1 of diligence often closes 1 to 2 weeks earlier than a seller who's assembling documents reactively. How a buyer evaluates deferred maintenance during the walk. When a serious buyer walks a 2 to 4 unit rental for the first time, they're not just looking, they're estimating. The exterior walk. Cost mental model. Roof at 20 plus years equals $8,000 to $15,000 replacement budget. Roof under 10 years equals $0. The interior walk. Common areas. This is the highest impact area for the walk. Old mechanicals visible in the basement are the largest single bucket of deferred maintenance on most older York County properties. The interior walk. Each unit. Cost mental model. Cosmetic kitchen refresh, paint cabinets, new hardware, faucet, equals $1,000 to $3,000. Full kitchen renovation equals $8,000 to $15,000 per unit. Adding it up, that's $61,000 isn't all due in year one. Some of it is, if the property held for 5 to 10 years, here's what would need to happen. But it shapes the offer the buyer can make today. Roof at 22 years of $12,000, plus older electrical panel of $4,000, plus galvanized plumbing in 2 of 4 units of $8,000, plus HVAC systems aging. 2 of 4 will need replacement in next 5 years of $12,000, plus knob and tube remnants and attic of $8,000, plus cosmetic kitchen and bath refresh in 4 units of $12,000, plus exterior paint touch-up of $5,000, for a total of about $61,000. What triggers a retrade versus a walkaway? Routine deferred maintenance, already priced into the offer. Old mechanicals, dated kitchens/baths, painted over plaster cracks, normal wear. Buyer accounts for this in the offer. No renegotiation needed if disclosed up front. What sellers can do. 3 pre-list moves dramatically shift how a buyer reads the walk. Address the cheap to fix, big optical impact items, document what's been done, and disclose what hasn't been done. What a clean rent roll looks like to a buyer. A rent roll is the single most scrutinized document in a small multifamily sale. The buyer's offer math runs through it. The lender's underwriting depends on it. The fields a clean rent roll includes. A complete rent roll lists, per unit, number and type, square footage, tenant, lease start and end dates, current rent, deposit held, and who pays utilities. Plus a property-level total at the bottom. A spreadsheet or PDF is fine. Completeness is what matters. What a clean rent roll looks like. Here's a clean 4-unit rent roll. Each unit on its own row with its type and current rent, totaling $3,550 a month. Every field present, numbers that tie out, nothing buried. That's exactly what a buyer wants to see. What sloppy rent rolls look like. Common rent roll mistakes that signal disorganized ownership, missing fields, numbers that don't tie out, and inconsistent units. Building a clean rent roll from scratch. Step 2. Build the table. For each unit, fill in every field from the lease and recent rent collection records. 2 questions a buyer asks beyond the document. Beyond the rent roll itself, a buyer asks 2 follow-up questions during diligence. Can I see the rent roll and rental deposit statements? And can the tenants sign estoppels? Why a clean rent roll matters at the offer stage. Same property, same actual income, different presentation, different offer. The 5 to 15% gap is real money on a $250,000 to $400,000 property, $12,000 to $60,000. What this means for you. Now you know what to expect across the whole process. The owners who go in informed have the smoothest sales, fewer surprises, better decisions, and a cleaner path to closing. Want to talk through yours? Ed Lane, a local buyer in York County, is actively buying 2 to 4 unit rental properties directly from owners. Free landlord guide and a direct line at yellowhousebuyers.com.